Hello, I am Kelly Back, and I am the ESL teacher at Southside Elementary, and this is my partner, Whitney Hendry.
I am a kindergarten teacher here at Southside.
And she has partnered with me for my lesson plan project in EDU 580 at Georgetown College. And so Mrs. Hendry gave me a kindergarten lesson plan for her guided reading lesson with a specific ELL student of mine who is reading at a pre-A level. And so in going over the lesson, I have made some modifications for you, just suggestions on ways to modify a typical guided reading lesson at this level for a kindergarten student. Our student, because he's in kindergarten, has not taken the access test. He's only been screened using the WIDA screener at the beginning of kindergarten. So those are the only scores that we have to go on right now as far as English language proficiency. But I've spent time with him this year, and it seems to be pretty much on target with what he is able to do. In your lesson, which I emailed you earlier so you could take a look at it, I went through and looked at the Kentucky Academic Standards, which were to have your students in this group follow their words from left to right, top to bottom, and page to page, which is part of their concepts of print. Also to have them recognize and name all upper and lowercase letters of the alphabet. Demonstrate basic knowledge of one-to-one letter-sound correspondences by producing primary or many of the most frequent sounds for each consonant, and then also to read common high-frequency words. And it was framed around the book The Sea, which is a Houghton Mifflin book. And I know these books a lot of times in kindergarten are very simple, and so you don't have a lot of content to work with in there. So I tried to look at it through the lens of an EL teacher and give you suggestions for how to help an ELL student be able to comprehend and decode a little bit easier. So I used something with Whitney called the SIOP lesson plan model, which is Sheltered Instruction Observation Protocol. And it is one of the most highly researched models of sheltered instruction, which is one of the methods that we're learning about in this class. And I have a checklist that I will give you, and the parts where I modified your lesson plan, I starred each one, and I also started on here so that you could see the 8 different parts of a SIOP lesson, and there's more on here than what I suggested, but just to give you an idea of what it looks like and how to think about your lesson plans in the future through that ELL lens.
Okay.
The good thing about this kind of a lesson plan is that a lot of the things on there you're already doing because it's based on best practices, so it's not a lot of additional things that you have to think about. It's just ways to enhance your lessons a little bit, to think about kids who don't have the same background in English that other students do. So at the beginning of your lesson, for modifications of preparation, you're very good at writing clear content objectives. Most teachers are these days. Something that we're learning is that you want to add in a language objective for your ELL students. And so what you want to think about is the 4 domains of learning English, which are listening, reading, speaking, and writing. How specifically can they use one or more of those skills in your lesson to develop their language proficiency? I gave you some examples on your lesson plan. I said you could say, I can orally tell why the author wrote this book, which would give your students some speaking practice. I can say new vocabulary words from the story, having them practice pronouncing those new bigger words. I can write about animals that live in the sea or by the sea, and their writing could of course be pictures at this level, or using words and then eventually sentences. Or I can listen for words that begin with a given sound. I can read sight words from the yellow list, which you were targeting. And so it's just a way to think about kind of restructuring your content objectives a little bit to add in those language domains or add on just a separate language objective. Something else I put on there as a suggestion for preparation is identifying supplementary materials to use with ELL students. And so, in this book, it's a very typical kindergarten book. It's very simplistic with the text. And if you look at the pictures, it's about sea animals, and they are a little bit cartoony. And so I was just thinking that it might be good to prepare your students for this by showing them realistic pictures of sea animals that are mentioned, because there's a seal, there's a whale, there's a fish, there's another one.
The seal was hard for a lot of them.
It is, yeah, definitely. A bird, so animals that they would see at the sea, to just show them what those real animals look like. And so you could do that by pulling up digital pictures. You could even just, here's a book about whales, you could find just a nice picture in there to show them, and let them compare this to the picture in the book, just so that they are making those connections and building background knowledge on what a whale actually is. In this particular book, the boy is painting a picture, which is why the pictures do look a little cartoony, because he's illustrating them. And so he's holding a paintbrush in the pictures. And so, we assume that a child knows what they're doing, but you could always get a paintbrush out, let them use them as pointers when you talk about what it's actually used for in art class and that sort of thing, just to, again, help them build that background knowledge. I also thought it would be a good idea to make sure that whenever you are teaching about the sight words that are in the book, to always have a visual. I've been a kindergarten teacher myself, and so we have our sight words posted all of the time. But it's a good idea that whenever you're talking about the word to not just say it, but to just have them there ready to hold up and show your students, so that they're constantly getting a visual of what that word looks like. And another thing I thought was important is, they're learning the word look, and in this particular book is at the beginning of a sentence, and so, it's good to just explicitly teach that to your kids, that the uppercase L at the beginning doesn't change the word, it's still the word look. So just again, to have that visual out for them. Does that sound like something that would be helpful?
Yes, I think so a lot.
Okay. That's actually getting into the next modification from the SIOP model, which is building background. And so using a lot of those visuals that you would prepare with, again, for building that background knowledge. You want to make sure that you are explicitly linking their past learning to new concepts. So as they are reviewing sight words that they have already mastered or that they've seen numerous times, you want to be making connections to them and helping them understand that you're building onto the list of words that they know by sight, so that they understand what is happening each time during their lessons. Let's see. One of the other modifications that's really important in kindergarten for these students is comprehensible input. And what that means is the information that you're giving your ELL students that they actually understand. It's being able to slow down your speech a little bit so that they have time to process the words that you're saying. Whenever you are teaching them new words, making sure that you enunciate those words and sounds. Even pull your mask down for a minute if you feel comfortable. I do that a lot in here because they need to see the shape of your mouth making those words. Particularly word endings. Learning is something that our Spanish-speaking students have a lot of issue with, is making that ending sound. Some other things, just using a variety of techniques to make concepts clear, such as modeling. So again, in your lesson, using the finger for one-to-one correspondence is something we do at that level. So making sure you model that for your students. It's okay to take their hand and, help them move their hand to the words. Visuals, of course, and then it's important with our language learners, if you are able to translate the English words to Spanish, to give that to them to support their learning, because they might know concepts in Spanish, and if you can sync up the word, like C is Omar in Spanish. And so sometimes they go, oh, okay, that's what that is. Particularly a word like C that they might get confused with the sight word C. If you can help them attach this one to the Spanish word because that would be familiar to them, it reinforces that concept in their language learning. Google Translate, I'm finding, is amazing. I've not used as much of it in the past as I am now. And so I have found that a lot of my kids really like it whenever they aren't understanding a word. If I pull it up and let it pronounce the word because it has the right accent and inflection to it that I can't do, and all of a sudden it makes sense to them. They're like, oh, that's what it is. Okay, they can figure it out. So I keep my cell phone very close by for that. Do you have any questions about those parts of the modifications?
I don't think so. That all sounds good.
Yeah. I spent most of the time talking about those at the beginning because I feel like they're the most important at the kindergarten level. I did put some other things on here, modifications for strategies, scaffolding, of course. We scaffold a lot in kindergarten, so that comes very natural. So doing things like having that alphabet chart available whenever they're first learning letters and sounds and they're starting to write. If your student is going to build their name out of the magnetic letters, if they're having trouble doing that, provide a model until they're able to do it from memory. And then slowly take those things away once they master their skills. Modifications for interaction. Wait time is very, very important. And with our ELLs, sometimes it's a little bit more than what you would give our other students because you have to remember that they're processing language. They're trying to make meaning in two languages, and you just have to give them a few extra seconds to really do that before they can speak and answer questions. Some other things, modifications for practice and application. I put on there about providing activities that integrate all the language skills. Again, that's our domains that we focus on: listening, reading, writing, speaking. So that goes back to writing those language objectives. So just kind of keeping that in your mind whenever you're preparing lessons for this student's group or the others in your class. As far as lesson delivery and reviewing and assessment, I think you do a great job with that in kindergarten. Just really remembering to pace the lesson according to the student's ability level. And then grouping students in heterogeneous groups is a good thing to do. Just because our language learners don't speak English fluently, they still know a lot sometimes. And so they don't necessarily need to be grouped with lowest students in our class. So you want to make sure they get chances to work with other students on higher ability levels. Assessment, it's constant in kindergarten, but giving feedback immediately to students on their output, their speaking and their writing, to help them be aware and self-monitor whenever they are learning. Those skills are super important. Have you tried any of these things with our students before this lesson or even since?
That's after this, and I kind of did read some of that. We read another book that had body parts in it, and so I actually was able to look up the body parts, and so I was able, when it said eyes, I was able to say the Spanish word for eyes, nose, ears. Awesome. And so when we went through the book walk and looked at all those, we were able to do that, and I do think that they were even a little more excited about it. They were like, oh yeah, like it kind of engaged them more, I think.
Yeah, and engagement is huge. That's half the battle is getting them involved in their lesson. Any other questions that you have for now about our student that we have focused on?
I don't think so. I think this is a lot of really good information, a bunch of things. I was like, oh, why didn't I think of that?
Right. and I'm not trying to overwhelm you at all, because I'm the first to say we can't put more on our teachers. But again, in looking at the PSYOP lesson, there's a lot of things that you're already doing, or things that you just maybe haven't thought of in a while, or thought about how they apply to ELLs. And so that's why I wanted you to have the checklist. And just remember, when you have to kind of retrain yourself. So think about one little thing. If it's just visuals, work on that for a little while, and then think about what else that you could add. I did just test our student on Access in the past couple of weeks, and so I don't have the scores for the kindergarten version of the test. I got to test him one-on-one, so I have an idea of how he did. I'm looking forward to seeing the official scores when they come back, how it compares to the beginning of the year, and then getting to work with him going forward and grow over the years. So I thank you for letting me be part of your classroom and give you some advice.
Yes.
And I hope that we can continue with the elevations training that we kind of got into earlier this year with other teachers, trying to kind of spread information on how we can do things a little better to support our ELL students. All right, thank you.
Thank you.